Hey guys, it's M4J here, and welcome back to the M4J network here on OpenTTD. So last time out, I introduced this new project that you're seeing on the screen right in front of you here, including the freight terminal, shape and size, what each platform does, that kind of thing. This episode is kind of going to be a continuation of that, as well as a little bit more discussion about the latest rail news, and also me starting to complain a little bit again about some of the gripes that I'm having with this game. And actually, I want to start with a gripe that I've been having in this game, because I mentioned last episode I recorded a Patreon only video of the rebuild of Redstone interchange from 7 platforms to 10, better layout, all that good stuff. Now I checked, double checked, triple checked and quadruple checked the signaling when I did that project, and you'll see that in the video. You'll see me constantly checking the signals, making sure they are what they're supposed to be, and yet for some reason Guard City Great Eastern employs stupid drivers who don't seem to know where their trains are going, because I keep ending up with trains going down the freight only line between Redstone and Dinpool East. How that's happening, I don't know. Why that's happening, I don't know. It's always trains that are trying to find the fast line between Redstone and GSJ. And I checked it. They can get from every platform, you can get to the fast line heading east and west. So it's not that. The only lines you can't get to are the bypass lines through the centre of the station, but that's not where they're trying to go. They're actually trying to go to Goowood West Fast, I think it's called, the name of the waypoint, which is the fast lines. It's the waypoint on the fast lines out of Redstone heading towards Guard City. Now, I don't know why trains couldn't find that, but I've now had to go through and put denies on all of the signals leading out of the station, and only trains that are supposed to be heading towards those waypoints are allowed. Now, I've tried to avoid doing this across the network because I found it was causing more problems than it was solving. The waypoints are supposed to act as the barriers, really, to stop trains that aren't supposed to be going on those lines from going on those lines. That obviously wasn't working. So now if a train gets lost anywhere around Redstone, I'm going to have to manually control it pretty much to get it through the station and back on the main line again, which is going to be an absolute pain in the backside. But that's the solution I've had to come up with, because for some reason the pathfinding in this particular station since the rebuild has been catastrophically woeful. And it's not just here. I have a very similar problem at Drentborn, which is how I know that it's not necessarily my fault. I have a very similar problem with trains at Drentborn trying to go from Drentborn down towards Pruntford and excuse me, Plenborough, where they have to, well, for some reason it's cross-country and cross-region trains that are doing this. For some reason they turn north after Drentborn and start heading up north again towards Denston. I don't know why they're doing it. I really don't know. I wish I did know so I could stop it, but I have absolutely no bloody clue why they're doing what they're doing. All I know is they are doing it. And it's only when the train gets to Puningville, which, as you know, is north of Henninghall, that's when I realise that there's a problem. And I only realise there's a problem when it comes up on the ticker bar saying train 469 has no path, can't find a path to continue. And I'm looking at it thinking, why? And literally, as I'm recording this audio now, I'm just checking in the game. And for a second there, I thought another one had done it. But it turns out there's a queue at Puningville anyway, which isn't good either. One of the reasons, by the way, I didn't actually mention this. I'll probably mention this properly in the video. One of the reasons why I rebuilt Redstone was because of the Guard City Connect and Guard City Express franchises completely blocked up the station. And it's not just this station they block up, they also block up others. So I've completely redone that timetable, which, again, wasn't part of the plan, but it's happened, how it's been done. Anyway, on to the topic of today's video. I'm going to rant less now. And that is to do with my freight logistics and how I'm planning on actually setting it up and getting it going. Now, I've talked about this before, the hub and spoke system. And I'm still going to keep with the hub and spoke system. That's not changing. But I really like the idea of every freight train on the map having an origin, a destination, and then at least one hub that it goes through on the way. So, for example, currently we've got a coal train that runs from Benpool Coal Mines through Monningpool Falls Freight Terminal, through Guard City North Freight Terminal, and then up to Sindwood Industrial Park. That kind of works out kind of well. That's not a sentence, really, is it? let's be honest. It works out kind of well. Sometimes. Not always, which is kind of not good. So I need to have a review as to how this is going to work. And again, I touched on this in last week's episode, where I think the problem was I tried to phase these things in, but I didn't have the infrastructure to phase these things in. So right now we've got, off the top of my head, we've got 5 main freight terminals on the map, which is nowhere near enough. And there will be more getting built. In fact, I'm already planning out the next one, which is going to go up near Gronwell. And that's going to be the link between the Grand Northern Main Line and the East Coast Main Line. But even then, we still haven't got any in the southwest corner. And there aren't any really between Gronwell and Sindwood, or Gronwell and Lanningway, or I've actually forgotten the name of this one again. That's good. BFFT anyway. There's no freight terminals between BFFT and Guard City, literally none. So I'm gonna have to plan out a lot more, and they're not all gonna be huge like this. Sometimes, and this is the idea that I wanted to run by you guys. When I was looking for inspiration for these freight terminals, I mentioned last week, I looked at Doncaster International Railport, which only has like 6 tracks. It's tiny in comparison to something like Daventry. I think Daventry is the largest rail hub in the UK. Or it could be London Gateway, thinking about it. It might even be Felixstowe still. But one of those is the largest. And Doncaster is one of the smallest. It's a little tiddler in comparison. But I want to build things like that. So I don't always have to build these huge interchange hubs everywhere. I can just have like a 2-track main line, and then just beside it, like 3 or 4 sidings where a container train might pull in, unload, reload, and then head off again. And keep it simple, and not have to build these huge terminals everywhere. So we will still have the huge terminals, don't get me wrong. Guard City North, Guard City South, Lanningway, Sindwood, Morningpool Falls, and now BFFT. Plus the one in Gronwell, and plus the one down in the southwest corner. And this isn't, I'm not talking about building small stations by industries necessarily. I'm just talking about, say for example, the line between Denston and Drentbourne, since I've already mentioned it. Let's say, actually, no, maybe not between Denston and Drentbourne, maybe between Denston and Bathurst Street. There's quite a big green area. Where am I? I'm just looking now. So between Munfingway and Bunway, for example, there's a set of tunnels. But you could easily shorten those tunnels and build a freight hub on top, small freight hub, or even just have a diversionary freight line that goes off either side of the tunnel and climbs up on top of the hill. Or maybe by One Town, or even in the Triangle, just north of One Town. Have a little freight hub in there. It doesn't have to be huge. It just has to be an interchange point. And it's really so that trains that run from BFFT don't have to go all the way up to Guard City necessarily. They could just interchange halfway instead. It very much depends on how profitable these trains will be. I want to try doing long distance freight and see if that does pay, but I'm not convinced. And the way I'm actually going to test this is by setting up a new train between Benpool and some kind of industry that accepts coal down in the... Actually, maybe not Benpool. Oh, okay. I have an idea. So the iron ore mine on the West Winds line between Flayham and... Is it between Flayham? Hang on. I'm just going to swipe over to it now. So yeah, it's between Flayham and Dronnington and Tenfing Bridge. And it is called Dinfinghall Iron Ore Mine. I'm actually going to pin that on my screen right now so I can run this as a test. So I'm going to pick up iron ore from there. I'm then going to run down to Guard City North and drop off the iron ore and then pick it up again, obviously, because that's how this works. But at the same time, I'm also going to interchange with the coal trains from Benpool, because I'm then going to run a train from Guard City North right the way down to BFFT. And because I'm swiping over there now, I can tell you that it is Broadworth Falls Freight Terminal. And then we're going to stop at the minerals bit, unload, run to the siding, run back to the minerals bit, load up again. And then I think I'm going to run this train up the east coast. And somewhere along the east coast, I'm going to find like a steel mill. And that's where the freight's going to be delivered to. Now, I have no idea how profitable this is actually going to be. Not a clue. I'm hoping very profitable, but you never know. I'm just walking along the tracks right now. I might build a freight-only line that bypasses Keddingston Y as well and just connects the two slow lines together, north and south. I'll probably do that off camera as well. All passenger trains will reverse at Keddingston, but freight trains, it doesn't seem smart doing that. And yeah, somewhere up the east coast, I'm going to build a station, just a temporary one, near a steel mill. And that's where... Have I found one? Nope. And that's where this stuff's going to get dropped off. And I'm going to start running mineral trains up and down. And then... Oh, I found one. There we go. And then I'm going to have a metal train pick up metal from the same station, run back south to BFFT. And then from BFFT, it's going to run across to Guard City South. And then it's going to drop off the metal probably there. And then the ship is going to take it on. In fact, I'm just going to check that as well. Because I believe... oh, there's Bar City. Wow, Bar City is really developing now. I'm quite happy with that. Lots and lots of roads. BFFT is then going to transfer the metal onto a ship, which is then going to complete the journey over to... Let me just find the name of it. Marston Industrial Park, yeah, which does accept metal. So there you go. That should get those ships then profitable. Those ships are then going to pick up goods, and they're going to take those goods, in fact, goods and what else? Goods and manufacturing supplies. They're then going to take those back to Guard City South, and then from south, it's going to redistribute across the entire network again. So that's going to be my test logistics, and I might record that as a separate episode to go up after the third episode of this project. And I say 3 episodes now because the poll is now closed, because I'm getting ready to start editing these videos, and there were indeed 3 videos you guys asked for. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, there's a strategy I tried in the past, which was having trains running between 2 points, and then every time I want to transport a cargo, the first thing I do is look to see if there's already a train running that route. So, for example, if we start producing like timber at Guard City South, or at least at Marston, which then goes up to Guard City South on the boat, I want to then be able to transport that on a train to somewhere. Now, say we've already got flatbeds going from Guard City South all the way across to BFFT, and then from BFFT up to somewhere that accepts timber. It will seem stupid to start a new service to transport timber when we've already got a train that runs flatbeds and could potentially transport timber. Most of the trains on my network are set to auto refit. The freight trains are anyway, auto refit at stations depending on what is accepted and where they're going. Now, I believe it's now the case that I don't have to worry about manually setting it the first time around and then setting it afterwards. I think it will do it by itself now, but I'll see about that. If that is the case though, then that will be awesome, because that saves me a job. And then I can start running all these logistics trains across the network. Every time a new line's built, we could potentially reroute some services here and there. And that's kind of the conundrum I have now, is how do I get a freight train from Guard City down to BFFT? And it's something I'm kind of going to plan out on... So I say on camera, but I'm not really on camera right now. But you know what I mean? Like in this video, I'm going to try and plan that out. I think the best way of doing it is to copy the cross-region service from Redstone down to Pruntford, and that is to, or it's cross-region, isn't it? From, well, actually no, it's kind of an amalgamation of cross-network services. But anyway, go from Guard City North along the freight-only loop down to Redstone, and actually the freight-only loop has those storage sidings, which I will be using still. The Guard City Freight Ring East storage. I think are there some on the west side? If there aren't, I'm going to build some. Not necessarily to transfer goods, but from one train to another, because that's what the freight terminals are for. But just to store trains, because now I've got the day length factor changed. I think I can change my schedules slightly. So instead of having a freight train run every hour, I could probably have it run every half hour. Sorry, I can probably have it run every hour. And these little storage sidings will help with that. So a train can pull into the siding for a little bit and then continue on its journey. Something like that, maybe. But yeah, once it reaches the main line at Redstone, I'm then thinking of just having it follow the Great Eastern Main Line right the way down to Denston and then on to Drentbourne. Does Lanningway accept... It does accept metal. Oh, it does accept timber and wood as well. So that's something to bear in mind. So the mineral train will bypass this, but the flatbed train, I think, will actually stop at Lanningway on its way back to Guard City. And actually, if it does that, then it doesn't need to go to Guard City. That might save a trip. Yeah, okay, I might do that then. But yeah, all the way down to Denston, then down through to Drentbourne. And then from Drentbourne, run down the southwest line. I'm just following the route as I speak. Follow the southwest line down towards Plenborough, sorry, and then take the new line that I built a couple of weeks ago onto the south coast line, and then from there keep heading along the south coast until you get to BFFT. I'm just constantly following this line to make sure that it is in fact the case still. It's a very long route though. And then yeah, through the little branch line that I built. In fact, I think I build it in the next episode, so slight spoiler alert there. But yeah, into BFFT, which is Broadworth Falls. I need to write this down somewhere. Broadworth Falls Freight Terminal. But yeah, the return journey then on the flatbeds could probably just go as far as Lanningway and not have to go right the way to Guard City. Yeah, that might be a better route, actually. That might be a much better route. So that's kind of how I'm going to go with this. And I'm going to try not to have routes duplicated. So if I've got the mineral train running from BFFT up to this new steel mill, I don't necessarily want the flatbed train to do the same route. I might want it to go a slightly different route. But ultimately, I want these trains still to head from the same place to the same place. So it might not be as easy as that. We'll have to see. That's kind of the plan. That's the plan that I've got in mind. We'll see if it works. Hopefully it will constantly be tweaked over time and easy to tweak over time. So if things change for whatever reason, then it won't, take a month or so to actually get it updated. It should be pretty straightforward. Speaking of timber, because I did mention timber earlier, it looks like there's going to be a new timber train service on the West Highland line. Now, from my memory, the West Highland line is quite sparse in terms of trees, so I don't actually know where these trees are coming from. Hey, might be cool, who knows. But yeah, I'm going to sort of move away from freight a little bit in this video and talk more about what's going on around the rest of the network, because there is some cool stuff. And actually, because I mentioned it, let's go to sorry if you can hear me turning the pages of my magazine, by the way. I'm going to go to High Speed 2 news, because construction has actually begun in earnest now. It's not just sitting around talking about, should we do it? Maybe we should do it. Or I don't know, maybe we should do it. Maybe we shouldn't do it. It looks like they're actually starting to do it, which is good. So, the worst named tunnel in history, Long Itchington Tunnel Portal, that's now ready to go by the looks of things. It's actually, like, I'm looking at a picture of the site right now taken from above. And you can almost imagine the tracks and the trains running through it already. It's kind of cool. But it's good that we're starting to get to this stage now. And I've seen photos of some of the construction sites, and I've seen like a before and after of some of the construction sites. And I know environmentalists are still deeply concerned about what's going on with some of these construction sites. Like, they're basically brownfield now, whereas they used to be like woodlands and things like that. And I get it, it's totally understandable. But I think what you've got to remember sometimes is these things have to happen in order for progress to be made. And most projects these days of this scale will have an environmental impact study as well. And there'll always be things as part of the deal, like they have to build certain nature reserves or protect certain species. It's not just they go in with a stick of dynamite and blow it up like they used to. There is a lot more thought goes into it now. And you know, I'm a fan of progress. I like to see things getting built. I like to see things happening. So you know which side of the fence I'm sitting on. But that doesn't mean I'm just standing there going, you know, cut down all the trees, kill all the animals and things like that. Because I'm really not. I'm really not. And I think a lot of these tunnels that are being built, that have driven up the price of this project, they're being built to protect the areas in which the rail runs through. You know, the Chilterns didn't need to be tunneled under. They could have built it on the land, or they could have built bridges. But there was enough pressure on the project planners that they've built these, or they're going to build these huge tunnels. I think like the longest tunnels in the UK, or some of the longest tunnels in the UK, will be on High Speed 2 now, as part of this maintaining the aesthetics project that's now being forced upon them. But along with that, Old Oak Common, the former GWR and Heathrow Express depots, are now cleared for demolition. So they're currently disconnecting amenities and things like that. And once that's done, they're going to demolish the buildings and they can start building the Old Oak Common Super Hub Station, which I'm really, really excited about. I know it sounds really geeky and nerdy to say that, but this is the first like properly huge station from scratch that will be built in my lifetime. You've got things like St Pancras International, which some of it was built from nothing in 2000 or open in 2007, built in the early 2000s. But the original stations still existed, and they've just extended that. Same with, trying to think of some other examples. Stratford International was a brand new station, I suppose, and Ebbsfleet International was a brand new station. They're not huge though, not compared to Old Oak Common. I'm trying to remember how many platforms it's going to be. Isn't it 8 platforms on the surface and the same underground or something like that? It's along those lines. I know it's the largest single station build in modern UK history. That was one of its selling points back in the day. But it's really cool that they're going ahead with it. It's a real vital connection between Crossrail, GWR and High Speed 2. It's the first station out of Euston on High Speed 2, and I think it's actually going to be the London terminus for High Speed 2 whilst Euston's being finished. So it's a really monumental part of the project that this is now going ahead, and I think it's a good omen for the rest of the project that this is going ahead. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do with that. High Speed 2 have also revealed something called the Chiltern Chalk Grassland Scheme, which I think is part of what I was talking about just now. 127 hectares of chalk grassland, woodland and wetland habitats. They're being created as part of the High Speed 2 project to create a green corridor where the new railway passes through the Colne Valley. So I'm trying to see if it mentions how long these tunnels are still. 10 miles. There we go. 10-mile long tunnels. That's long. That's really long. Like, you think how long 10 miles is. That's all going to be underground. It's probably going to take like 5 minutes on the train when you're actually going full speed. But the Channel Tunnel is like 26 miles, I think. And that goes under a sea. So you think how long these tunnels are. Pretty damn long, if you ask me. But, you know, so I say it's a necessary evil, but it's kind of the opposite. It's a necessary good to build these tunnels. I can see why they're happening. And the fact that they are building these conservation areas, it is valuable. And this has happened before. So the Olympic site in Stratford, some of the wildlife there was relocated, shall we say, to the Thames estuary. Trying to remember what the name of the town is. It's near Ebbsfleet, I know that much, where some of the High Speed 1 projects created a new nature reserve there as well. You've always got to do that now. Whenever you're building a project like this, you've always got to have somewhere to relocate the wildlife and conserve the local habitats and things like that. It is unfortunate these things do have to happen. Like, these things have to be moved. These creatures have to be relocated, and even the trees and things like that. Sometimes trees are saved. They are moved from one place to another. That's not necessarily been the case here. But it does have to happen. You know, as again, it's in the name of progress. The only thing I don't like about High Speed 2, and I have said this before, are the bridges that are being planned. So there's one here, the Colne Valley Viaduct, which is actually not far from where the Chiltern tunnels are going to be. It's the longest tunnel on High Speed 2. It's 2.1 miles long. It's 56 piers, supporting a series of spans that are at least up to 80 meters long. The bridge is going to be no more than 10 meters off the ground. Weighs 6,000 tons, which is just incredible. And it's going to be the longest rail viaduct, I think, in the UK. Yeah, it's the UK's longest railway bridge, 2.1 miles. Now, it's necessary because it's being built over marshland. It's also being built over a series of lakes, a park, the Grand Union Canal, and the River Colne. It's not far away from the tunnel entrances going into London. So it's basically you go over this bridge, and it's pretty much like the approach to Stratford, coming in from Kent, where you go across the long bridge there. You go underneath the Dartford crossing, or over the Dartford crossing, under and over the Dartford crossing, I suppose. And then you run along that long viaduct, then you run along the ground level for a bit, and then you dive down underground to head towards Stratford. Kind of strikes me as being quite similar to that. The only thing I don't like about these bridges is they're all concrete viaducts. And I know it's a cost-saving measure and things like that. This one supposedly has been designed to look like a stone skipping across the lake. And I'm looking at concept art of it, and it kind of looks like that. But they're all white or grey, and they're very, very bland looking. And, you know, things like this, you kind of want to disguise them in the environment that they're passing through. Otherwise, they do become eyesores. And I'm not looking at this thinking, that's a nice looking bridge. I'm just looking at it thinking, that's a bridge. So I think they need to maybe let some nature take over a little bit. Obviously, don't compromise the structure of the bridge, but put some moss down the sides maybe to make it look a bit greener and a bit more like it's part of the landscape. Little tweaks here and there. Maybe decorate the overhead electrification pylons, not the wires. Obviously, you don't want to interfere with those. But I think, is it in Poland or Hungary, somewhere like that? They have these like ring-shaped overhead electrification equipment. And it actually looks kind of cool. And I think more countries are starting to do that now around the world. And then you look at the UK and they're just normal high-speed electric poles. They could maybe decorate them a little bit in certain areas. You don't have to do it for the whole route, but just areas where people are going to be seeing the route. So like when it's 10 meters off the ground, for example, that might be a good candidate just to jazz it up a little bit and make it look a little bit nicer. But you know, it's personal opinion. That could be something that perhaps gets added to it in the future. You don't want to drive the cost up too much. Network Rail and whoever else is involved in this have a really good habit of making something that should take a weekend and a few £1,000, take a month and cost like several million. So I guess it's not as easy as just, you know, adding some stuff here and taking out some stuff there. But yeah, that's basically the High Speed 2 news, or at least it's the High Speed 2 news that I'm going to cover. I know it's still a very contentious topic. Most of us here, I must admit, are very much for it. I think we're pretty much for everything, whether it's reopenings or new lines, whatever it might be, we're pretty much for it because we like railways, we like trains, we want to see it get built. But I do want to always visit both sides of the fence because, again, it's very easy for us to sit here and say this should happen, this should happen, this should happen. But you have to look at the other side. You have to understand and appreciate the other side's arguments. Otherwise, you're never going to appease them. And that's really what needs to happen is you have to prove that High Speed 2 is not going to be a white elephant. It's not going to be an expensive mistake. It's not going to be damaging to the environment or anything like that. We have to make sure it's economically viable, environmentally sustainable, logistically plausible, and something else that may or may not fit in with all the other things I've just said. Once you can prove those things, then you can start to win over the critics. But I mean, High Speed 1 still has its critics, yet it's completely changed the landscape of commuter rail in and around Kent. I use it a fair amount in the past. I've used it to just to zip from King's Cross down to Stratford. It's brilliant, you know. 5 minutes, you cross the entirety of northeast London. It's fantastic. And I've used it a couple of times to get to Kent as well. My brother went to uni in Canterbury. I could get from my door to his door in just over an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours. And it used to take like 4 or 5. So it's a huge boost to just getting in and out of one of the most populated areas of the country. It was needed. And High Speed 2, yes, it only saves 20 minutes on certain journey times, but it also clears a path on the West Coast Main Line. So not only does it save journey times on this line, but it also saves journey times on this line. Because of that, they can then run more services, which could then take the pressure off another route and then save journey times on that line too. And it's a real cascade effect. And people don't tend to look at that. They just look at that one number and start mocking it, which I've seen a lot of, believe me. I follow a lot of people on Twitter whose opinions I don't necessarily agree with when it comes to high-speed rail. But, I agree with them on other points, and that's why I follow them still. I've gone very offline with with this whole thing. It's what happens when you improvise your videos. So to go back to like rolling stock news and network news, I'm going to wrap up the video with this news. Something that I've noticed a couple of times mentioned in my magazine this month is trains being tested to operate at speeds higher than their design speed. So for example, the Class 717s, which operate out of Moorgate to places like Hertford, Stevenage, Welwyn Garden City, I believe their top speed originally was just to be 75 miles per hour. But they're now being tested to operate at speeds of up to 100 miles per hour, which I think is what they're... What do you say when trains are related? Cousins, brothers, sister? I don't know. But the 700s can travel at 100 miles an hour on the East Coast Main Line. The networkers, by the way, could travel sometimes at 110. So, I know what I prefer still. But the 717s are being tested at 100 miles per hour. It does say here that the reasons for that currently are unclear. But I have a feeling it's to do with the upgrades currently happening on the East Coast Main Line, southern section at least, as far as Peterborough. So there's that new flyover that's being built just north of Peterborough. There's also the eastern bore of the Gasworks tunnel that's being brought back into use. And in fact, there is a lovely section in my magazine about that. Trains are now being tested running through it, and they're laying ballast and they're putting overhead electrification equipment in. And it looks like it's on track to be completed in June, which is what it was originally planned for. This is all part of turning the East Coast Main Line into the first digital railway in the UK. The first conventional digital railway in the UK, which basically means European Train Control System. That is right, isn't it? ETCS, European Train Control. Yeah, ETCS level 2. I want to say. Is that how? It's like the medium one. It's not level 3. I think is the super duper advanced one that's used on high speed rail. I think it's level 2 that's being used on the East Coast Main Line. But effectively, it's in-cab signalling, higher top speeds. I think they're talking about raising the speed limit to 140 on the fast lines. And I think this is part of it, raising the speed limit on the slow lines to 100. More trains, more capacity. You can get in and out of London quicker. With the new trains as well, I believe the acceleration is fast enough now that they can achieve 100 miles per hour even on the slower services. They will have to straighten the track at Brookman's Park, though, because there's always that bit where... Even if you're on a semi-fast train, you have to slow right down to go round the outside of the island platforms at Brookman's Park. I think it's Brookman's Park. I'm pretty sure it's Brookman's Park, not Welham Green. That needs to be changed. I'm sure that'll be part of the upgrades as well. But it's really interesting to see that they're actually going ahead with this. Likewise, the Class 360s, which are currently being tested for use on the Midland Main Line out of St Pancras, are also now being tested at 110 miles per hour, which I believe is 10 miles an hour faster than their original design speed limit. That's because the speed limit on the Midland Main Line is mostly 110 miles an hour. At least it is on certain sections. Some of the lines have actually been straightened or fixed so that speed limit is more achievable. And because your main line is only ever as fast as your slowest train. So if you've got slow trains going 50, 60 miles an hour and then you've got a 125 mile an hour HST behind, it's not going to get past. So you need to increase the overall line speed, which means you need to increase the overall average speed of your trains. And I believe this is part of that. I also find it really, really interesting that these trains can actually have their maximum speed increased during their lifespan. The 360s aren't new. The 717s are new. So maybe they did put in a little... clause in the contract that this train could perhaps have its maximum speed increase during its lifetime. But the 360s have been around since, I think, the early noughties, 2005, 2006 maybe, so mid to late noughties perhaps. So that they're actually redesigning the train at this point to make it run faster. The capacity doesn't change, don't get me wrong there. The capacity does not change, although they are running in pairs or triples, I think, the 360s. So they've been running tests with 3 pantographs raised and things like that to test the current draw on the wires. But yeah, 110 miles an hour, 3 trains, 12 cars. That's quite a lot of people you're moving around every hour. And that's the trick. That is the trick. It's like the greatest magic trick in railways is how do you get more people to move between station A and station B. It's not necessarily adding more trains necessarily. It's just about increasing the capacity of your existing trains. And if that's adding... I did say that right, didn't I? Yeah, not adding more trains, just increasing the capacity of your existing trains, which in this case technically involves adding more trains because you're running 3 units instead of 2 per train. But you know what I mean. And I think it works quite well. when you actually look at it. There is more rail news, but I think I'm going to save that for the next episode because I've been talking for 35 minutes now, which I never think possible when I sit down at my desk. Maybe you guys don't like listening to me for 35 minutes, but here we are. But yeah, I'm going to wrap up this video here, guys. There is plenty more to talk about, as I said. I am running a little low on some stories, but I will keep searching and I'll keep looking. And if there's any stories you guys want me to talk about, feel free to drop them in the comments section down below. It's always appreciated. Conversation topics and construction ideas are always warmly welcomed in the comments section, so feel free to post them down below. Besides that, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, and of course if you're enjoying the series. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button for plenty more content like this. And if you have already subscribed, thank you guys for your continued support. It is very, very much appreciated. And until next time, I will see you soon.